Welcome to class Math 112. Consumer Mathematics is the new area that we're going to start this week. It starts from chapter 10, page 563. You can see it in the blackboard. And for this week, we're going to cover chapters 10.1 and 10.2. As a way of review, we're going to look at fractions to convert to decimals, review percentages, and also we are going to do simple interest. We already done some of this work, and as we move along, I'll be introducing a new way of teaching so that it can make it easier for you to follow the material. And I have acquired another camera so that you can see the work that I'll do on a paper. We're going to try this one this time and see how it goes. Please send me your feedback. Remember, welcome to the class, MA 112. These are the assignments that you are to do for section 10.1 and 10.2. These exercises, some of them will be a review for you. And we're going to go over the material again. This will reinforce your capturing of the material, and I will be adding new things so that you can continue to grow and develop mathematical skills that are needed for the business math and be able to do transactions as we move along in our class. Make sure that you do the homework. It is important, especially now that we are not having too much face-to-face contact. If you have an issue with the material, please send me an email. It's always important that we stay in touch. I have been using Blackboard to give you guidelines as to how we're going to move forward. And I thank you very much for your participation. Again, any questions, any concerns, please send an email. Your homework, you can capture it via take a shot of it with your cell phones or a camera and send me those papers via email. I think it's going to be easier for me to track that in order to be able to give you credit for all the work that you have done. And I'd like to thank you for that. Really, it helps me to keep up with the grading. And the more work you do, of course, that your grade is going to show that. I thank you again. We're going to start with percents, fractions, and decimals. This is like a review. Percentage is always used daily. Wherever we go to the stores, we get discounts. They always give you prices like 20% off, 5% off, and something like that. And the percent is always given as a ratio, right? This is a ratio. We already covered this material before, so this is like a review. And we know that, for example, we have 18%, right? That's the number that is given for us, and then we have to convert this into a fraction, right? And the fraction, of course, is a ratio. So this will be 18 to 100. And also, this can be written as 18 over 100, right? And once you have this percentage represented as a ratio, that's the way you do it, right? You can simplify it more if you like, but that's good enough for now. That's example number 1. Example number 2. We have something like 6%, right? Again, we'll represent it as a ratio. That will be 6 to 100, and that will be also represented as 6/100. Okay, make sure that you follow the steps. Go one, step by step when you do this, because sometimes we skip a step here and there, and sometimes we end up in difficulties because basically we miss something in the calculation. So make sure that you do that. I have another example here. Let's say 0.5%, right? We want to represent this as a ratio, and so we have to continue using the same approach that we did before. So it will be 1/2, right, to 100, and that's also represented as 1/2, right, over 100. And here that you have to use your fractions, right? That's why fractions are very important. This can be represented as 1/2, right, times 1/100, and this will give you 1/200. Okay, make sure that you practice these conversions carefully. Follow the procedure, and in following the procedure, of course, make sure that you do it logically, right? So that you write your number and then represent it as a ratio like that, and then turn it into a fraction. And this is what we're looking for, right? To turn this into a fraction. And be careful every time that you do this. Like in this case, this is something that you need to practice, right? Because fractions sometimes can give us some difficulties, but you follow the step by step. Make sure that if you're having still difficulty with fraction, that you practice them. There is no other way to learn how to do this but to practice, right? Every time that we continue to learn new things, it turns out that the new things might not be the issue, but it's because we don't know how to deal with fractions that we get into trouble. Let's do one more example. Okay, sometimes the examples are simple, right, straightforward, but sometimes the examples, they're complicated because, like for example, in this case, in this example, we have 33 1/3 as a percentage, right? That's a mixed number, and we need to convert this into a ratio, and again we have to follow the same procedure. Right? So that's the ratio that we have calculated. Now we can convert this number into a fraction, and to do that we multiply this number 33 times 3 give us 99, and we add 1, but we retain the denominator, so we get 100 over 3, but then that is divided over 100, right? Remember the number for the denominator for the 100 is 1. So that one can also turn into, and dealing with fractions, we know that we have to turn this into 1 over 100, right? And then the result is going to be 1/3. Okay, this is an example that is, you have to really think about what you're doing here, right? So you have a percentage, right? You have to convert this mixed number into a ratio. So the first thing that you need to do is basically make sure that you write the ratio just moving the number from one side to the other, and then realize that this is a mixed number. You have to make it into a fraction. So this is the way we turn it into a fraction here, right? And recognize that just 100 is divided by 1, right? So you get two fractions. You're basically dividing two fractions, and we do that. Basically, we multiply the numbers, and that's the way we get to the calculation. Now here, as you can see, this cancels with that, and then you get 1/3. So this will be your answer. Okay, so make sure that you practice this procedure. I know that fractions can introduce some kind of difficulties for us, but we have to be willing to go step by step, right? Always write your solutions and showing either an equal sign or an indication like an arrow that it says, you know, that this percentage can be represented as a fraction, and also you can simplify it to this level, okay, when that is needed. So this is really important. You know, it's something that we do all the time. And when we do it all the time, then we get some practice, and we get to understand sometimes how to do the material, work with the numbers and move with the material in an easier structured way. That's the only way that we can do this, by practice. So now let's turn to decimals. Right? So decimals, now we have a percentage, like let's say for 24%, right? And we want to convert this percentage into a decimal, right? So we know that, and this is very important, every time that you see something like this, percentage into a fraction, basically you go 24 over 100, right? Make sure that you follow those steps. You will get to the right answer when you do this. And now if you divide that, right, the answer is going to be, you have to move the decimal from here to in two steps, 1, 2. So your answer is going to be 0.24. So that will be your decimal, right? So let's say this is example number 1 in this case. Now let's do another one. 3%. What is that equal to? Again, follow the methodology, right? Put the number here, 3 divided by 100, right? And now the decimal point is right here, so you have to move it 2 times. So it will be 1, 2. So this will be 0.03. Let's go one more example. 3, 18%. Okay, this is 18 divided over 100. Right, again, this one you have to move it from the decimal point 2 spaces, 1, 2. So it will be 0.18. And number 4, you have a half of a percentage, right? So what is that equal to? This will be equal to 1/2 divided over 100. And so we can convert this number, if you like, to a decimals and leave this over 100. But then here we have to know that the decimal point has to move two spaces, right? So we get 0.005. And that's basically the way you calculate decimals, right? And let's spend some time on this, so to give you some pointers here. So in this example, for example, you have 24, right? So every time that you have a percentage, right? Let's say end is the percentage, then turn it into end over 100, right? So that's the first thing that you need to do to be able to get the right answer. In some cases, you can use this methodology of moving the decimal point, right? The decimal point is right here, so you have to move it 2 locations, 1, 2. So we go, it's originally there, so you go 1, 2, right? And that's why the decimal point is right there. We move it two spaces. Same thing here, right? 3 over 100. Now you have to move it 2 again. From this point here, you move it. So you move it 1, 2. So your decimal point is right there. And that's the way basically that you get your answers. Again, here the decimal point will be right there for 18. So you have to move it 2 spaces. It will be 1, 2. So you get 1, 2. Now here, in this case, because you have a fraction, right? You have to work with you set up the problem like this, but you can set it up as a decimal right away if you see it. Otherwise, you have to go through the calculation and then deal with the movement of the decimal point. Like in this case, we have to move the decimal point 2 times. So we go. It was originally here, so 1, 2. So that will be our answer. And make sure that you always mark what your answer looks like at the end, so that I know exactly how you arrive to the proper calculations. If the number is not, like for example, in the case of 1/2, right, and you want to do this into a decimal, right, we know this is 0.5, right? That's equal, right? We know that this is equal to that, right? If the number is not exact like that, make sure that you write it like this, right? And it's always good to do this because when you use the calculator, the number is truncated. And sometimes we write the up to 2 decimals, right? Up to 100, so maybe up to 1,000 and so forth. We don't put all the numbers, and we have to use this kind of symbols to show when the quantity is exactly like equal or it's an approximation, right? So this is basically an approximation. So now let's turn our attention to fractions as percentages, right? It's the other way around. So we have fractions into percentages, right? So that's the conversion that we need to do. So we have, for example, 1/2. Let's take that example again. This is equal to 0.5, but we want to turn it into a percent. So what we need to do is we take this number, 0.5, and we multiply it times 100%, right? So this is what turns it into 100%. And so this is multiplying this times 100. So what it's going to do, we're going to move this point 2 places, right? 1, 2. So this is equal to 50%, right? If you have an issue with moving the decimal point, use a calculator. All right, this is example number 1. Example number 2, we have 1/8 is equal to, we can use the calculator to find this one here. So this is about 0.125 times 100%. And this is about 12.5%. Right, we move the decimal point 2 spaces there, so it will be 20. And let's do one more example here. 1/3, right? Make it into a fraction. So we do 1 times 4 plus 3 is 7 is 7/4, right? Then we can use the calculator and we get 1.75 times 100%. And that gives us, moving these 2 points, 1 to 3 will be 175%. Okay, so basically that's what is required of you to do in this part of the course. And again, these are very important manipulations that you need to know. Make sure that you practice them. If you don't practice this material, it's going to be very, very complicated, right? Because at the last minute you're trying to pack a lot, to learn. So make sure that you spend some time with it, and the more you practice, that you realize that it's easier to solve this kind of problems. We're going to move into another area as we go along. Is material that I have been being provided to you in a piecemeal way, so that you learn step by step, but we repeat some of the concepts so that you can develop the idea as to how this works. Again, I've been telling you all along, check your work. Also, make sure that you practice your homework, because when you practice, basically that's when it becomes second nature, right? I've been giving you the example of musicians who always practice their instruments, so they don't need to know where to put their finger so that they can get the right note, right? For those who are musicians, or for those who are a sport person, you know that you have to practice your skills in the field all the time. In our case, we have to do it with paper and pencils or pens. Make sure that you have your calculator. It's required that you use calculators. And when I give you the exams, it will be really take-home exams. You're going to do it at home, and I'm going to trust in your integrity and honesty when you do your work. The idea here is that we learn. We learn how to work with problems, how to tackle them, having a strategy as to how to solve problems. And the idea is that we are developing our minds so that we can start to think logically, and that's what mathematics is helping us to do. We'll continue in a few minutes. An application of percentage can be used to calculate a percent change. When we calculate a percent change, that means that we have to look at the difference of two numbers divided by a common value multiplied by 100%. And basically, the equation says that you have an amount from the last period, right? In other words, it's going to be the latest period, and then it's subtracted by the amount of the previous period divided by the amount on the previous period, right? So this value here, right, is the same value as here, right? So this calculation will give us a percentage in change. In other words, there is a delta. This is what change means, delta, right? You had a value at a given point, and then you have one which is probably the most closest one, let's say now, in the past, and then you divide it by the previous period multiplied by 100%. That will give you the percent change. This is a calculation that you need to maintain in your mind when doing calculations in this class, and as you know, also in other classes where this type of calculations are needed. Now, let's do an example. For those who have the book, please go to page 562. I'm sorry, 565. 555, that you will find the formula that I just presented to you at the bottom of the page. And then if you go to page 566, right, we're going to work out the example that is there. It's example number 5 in the book. And it reads like this. In 2014, the Major League Baseball team with the most improved record for winning games was the Los Angeles Angels. In 2013, the Angels won 78 games. In 2014, the Angels won 98 games. Determine the percent increase in the number of games won by the Angels from 2013 to 2014. So in this case of that example, we have the previous period is equal to 2013, and the latest period is 2014. So they're giving you two dates, right? The previous and the latest. And also they gave you some numbers. In 2013, you have the data that they won 78 games, right? For 2014, they won 98 games, right? So we have two periods, and then we have the information for us, and then we do the percentage change, and that will be equal to the latest period, right? Amount of the latest period minus the amount of the previous period divided by the amount of the previous period multiplied by 100%. So when we plug in the values here, we're going to use the latest period is 98, right? We subtract now 78, which is the 2013. We divide this by the previous period, which is 78, and we multiply all this. And if you do the calculation, you will get something like 20 divided by 78 times 100%, and that will yield the results of about 0.2564 times 100%. And remember what I told you, when you multiply by 100, you move the period two spaces, so the answer will be, that will be approximately 25%. So basically that's what you need to do in terms of using this formula. It is important to understand the periods, and in this particular case, this is example number 5 in the book, to recognize which is the previous period, the latest period, and if you do it like correspondingly like this, when you do your calculations, you can plug it in into your formula so that you can arrive to the proper answer. And always double check your work. You know, whenever we do math, sometimes we, in our mind, we're following the procedure correctly, but sometimes we miss a step. And keep this in mind, percentage change. In this case, is what we can read from the numbers is that in 2013, the number of ones was 78, for 2014 was 98, so you can see here that there was an increase. So this percentage is a positive number. You have a positive percentage increase, so that means that the value went up. So that means that the team were doing really well. Whatever they were doing, they improved their situation by 25%, more or less. So this is the examples that we need to do. I'll give you another one so that you can have enough materials to do your homework and to follow through the exams or quizzes. Like I said in the class, I will provide for you the formulas. The idea here is for you to apply the formulas to be able to know what to do with the numbers and to make sense of the numbers. So we now, let's do one more example, example number 6. Right, example number 6 is again, it's on page 566. And here we have a case. Here we have a case where it's talking about the stock market, right? Something that we find in the news all the time. And in the class, I told you one time that the stock market can be very volatile. One day can be doing really well. The next day, it can go down to the floor like it did a few days ago. So they give us an example here where it's tracking McDonald's stock price, right? And it says that on May 13th, 2014, the price of one share of the stock for McDonald's was $103.53. Then on October 16 of the same year, 2014, the stock came down to 89.91. So we know that the delta here, the difference, is negative, right? And so we have to do our percent again, change, and that's equal to the amount of the latest period minus the amount of the previous period divided by the amount of the previous period, and all this multiplied times 100%. Right, this is very important that you know where to put the numbers. So what's in the example for the McDonald's is what? The amount of the latest periods is 89.91 minus the previous period was 103.53. We divide this by the amount of the previous period, and that is 103.53. And remember to multiply all that times 100%. Now, if you follow these calculations, this is going to be a negative number, right? If you do the difference, there you get minus 13.62 divided by 103.53. And of course, you have to multiply this times 100%. And this calculation gives us around minus 13.2%. And again, looking at this calculation, when we do the analysis, because plugging the numbers is one thing, then we need to understand what the numbers mean. And so in this case, for the stock of McDonald's, right? All right, for the stock of the McDonald's from the period of May 13, 2014 to October 16, 2014, there was a decrease in value, right? The numbers went down as we move in time. And so our percentage here, in this case, when you get a minus, right, that means that the percentage was negative. And this represents a decay in the price, you can say that this was a loss, right, in value. So you can start to interpret the calculation. So a negative number in this case means that the value of the stock at one point was high, right? So we had a one point here when the value was high, and then at a given time this value was low, right? And typically speaking, in the market, for people who know the market and play the market, they always say buy when it's low but sell when it's high. Now, of course, as I said to you, in the stock market over time, it can fluctuate, right? It can go down and up and down. And the idea is for people to buy when things are low. But of course, to be able to do that, you have to have money, right? So you want to buy when it's low and sell when it's high. That's in general the idea there. Now, some people can do that, some people cannot. And that's the reality of how this works. And for you, you should be able to learn how to do these problems and start to understand what the calculation is telling you. But that's where the learning comes, right? When you are incorporating new things into something that is as simple as just plugging some numbers into a formula. Another example that we have of applying percent calculations in terms of percent differences or percent change is what we call the percent markup or markdown on cost. And it's similar to the previous formula that we had. In this case, we're dealing with consumer products, a given department store business. They have a percent of what to mark up in terms of a profit, right? And to do that, they need to have a selling price, right? That's the price that they're going to sell it at the store. Their cost, right? What they're paying for anything, any product, and divided by the dealer's cost multiplied by 100%. It's the same formula or equation that I showed you earlier for the percent change. Now, in some cases, the markup, again, is going to be a positive number, right? This means that you have a dealer's price. Let's say that you have something that you're going to sell for $20, and you're going to mark it up, right? And typically, some vendors, stores, they mark up their products maybe like 20% up, and so, or maybe more, depending on the item that they're selling, because they have to take into account rent and paying employees, benefits, and so forth, right? So they're going to sell a product, they're going to mark it up to have a profit, right? And this is the way they will calculate that. What will be that price increase? Now, the markdown, right? It could be something like a product has been on display for some time, and then they want to move the inventory, and they say they're going to lower the price, and they give you a markdown, right? So they want to give you a percentage discount, so these numbers can be also used for that. So in this formula here, right, the result that you get here, if the number is positive, that means that the number is marked up, is increased. If this number is negative, the representation of the number being negative, that means that it's a decrease. And so when you do the homework, you make sure that you understand what this concepts means, right? And for that, I'll show you some examples. I'm following the examples in the book to make it easy for all of us to understand this material. And on page 567, so if you have the book, make sure that you practice these problems. I'm going to go very slowly here. Example number 7. And it says determining percent markup. And it tells you in the problem that there is this hardware store that pays, right? The hardware stores pays 48.76 cents for some glass fireplace screens, right? So that's what the product is. Some glass fireplace screens. And they sell it regularly. They sell it, right? They sell these screens by, at a price of 79.88. Regularly, right? This is they sell it regularly. Now, the situation is that now they're selling them at 69, right? In other words, they used to sell it at this price, and now they're selling it at 69. So the question is, A, percentage markup. On the regular price, and B, they want the percent markup on the sale. Right, so this becomes a sale here. They're selling it at a lower price. So again, we have to do the calculations with the formula. And so in this case, we are going to do part A first, and then we'll do part B to see how much money there are lowering the price of these items. So now we say percent mark up. This is part A, and it's going to be equals to selling price minus the dealer's price over the dealer price or cost, right? This is the cost right here, and all this multiplied by 100%. In part A, then we have that the price that was paid was $48, right? That's the dealer's cost. So this is going to be equal to the selling price originally was 79.88 minus the selling price was 48.76 divided by 48.76 multiplied by 100%, and that will equals to this number here will give you roughly 0.6382 times 100%, and that's equal to, or about 63.8%. So that's the solution for part A. Now for part B, right, we use the same formula as before, and we plug in the values as now the price that is of the dealer is the same, right? So that will be equals to, for part B, it's going to be equals to the new price is 69.99 minus 48.76 divided by 48.76, and again all this multiplies times 100%, and if you do the arithmetic here, we'll get that this is about 0.4354 times 100%, and so this is about 43.5%. So there you have the examples on the problem where example number 7, where they're asking you to calculate products that are being sold at a price at a given point, but then the example there is maybe they want to move the inventory, so they lower the price, right? And therefore you can see the difference here. The markup percentage here is 63%, and here is 43%, right? So the fact that the number is still positive means that they're still making a profit, right? When you're making the calculation, try to interpret what is that the numbers are telling you. What is the message they're conveying here? What this means that somehow they lower their expectation to earn more money here, right? And if you want to know the difference, it's basically about 20%, right? 20% is what they are basically lowering the price. Okay, this is what you need to know and practice. Encouraging you to continue to do your homework. You know, the more familiar you are with this kind of problems, the more you will become acquainted with them. And we already know some algebra, right? We can manipulate, like for example, if you have the markup, right? And they're giving you this value, and then you have the selling price minus the dealer's cost, right? Over the dealer's cost, right? You can manipulate this if this is given to you, right? And they want to know what the dealer cost is. If they give you these two values, right? You can do a manipulation here with the variables, right? So you know how to move around with the numbers, right? Because if they're giving you two values that are known, markup and dealer cost, right? You can plug in these numbers and then you can manipulate to find out what the selling price is, right? If we were to do this, will be the selling price will be equal to what? This will come to multiply that, so markup, right, times dealer cost, right? Did you multiply this number, right? You get a number here, and then this number here, right? This is a multiplication here, right? So, right, you multiply that, and then this value here is subtracting, so it will come up adding here, right? and then that's the way you will solve for the selling price. So it's not just about learning the formula, but to manipulate the variables so that you can find the different values that are given to you. Make sure that you pay attention to that when you're doing your homework. And I think maybe one more example will suffice for the class for today on consumer math up to this point. We're going to continue to be doing more things. So let's do one more example. Example number 8. And that is page 567 in the book. So in this case, they want to find out the percentage markdown. All right, so they say that they have some calendars, 2016 calendars, that they want to move on. And this pharmacy reduces the price to $4. So the price, reduced price is equal to $4. And the cost for the store was $5. And so what was the markdown? So let's do our percent markdown. What is that going to be equal to? The selling price is, this is the reduced price, so this is our selling price. Right, that's the selling price. And this is the cost. So we have, that is 4 minus $5 divided by $5 times 100%. Right? We multiply all that, and then what we get here is minus, here is 1, right? We'll get here minus 0.20, and then we multiply all this times 100%, and so that's equal to minus 20%. Right, so this is the markdown that they did. Right, so make sure that you practice these problems again and again. Markdown, even though it's the same formula, the number that will result from this calculation is going to be negative. So the meaning of the negative means that this is the price that was reduced. You can say it was reduced. Reduced, right? By 20%. If you have any questions, please send me an email. We are moving into section 10.2, and it starts on page 573, personal loans and simple interest. For those who are following the book, make sure that you have it handy as you view this presentation. We're going to come up with some example from the book, so I will be spending some extra time showing you some of the details there. So we already have been working with the concept of simple interest. We covered this a few weeks ago, right? And the calculation for simple interest, right, I is equal to the principal. That amount is given in dollars, right? That's the unit. The rate is in percentage, and the time is given to you in years. You're already familiar with this formula. Make sure that you remember that the time is given in years. The problem can be presented to you that the loan is given in months. It could be given in like 36 months, 30 months, 46 months, and so forth. So you need to convert that quantity into years. So we're going to do an example, and I ask you to follow the book, right? We're going to do example number 1. You find it on page 574. In this case, we are presented with some information on example number 1. Right, we're told that there is this lady, Sherry, who had borrowed $6,200 to replace her roof. She's repairing a roof, right? That's the need that she has. And she went to her credit union and she obtained a 30 months loan, right? So this was our principal. This is our time, right? And then the rate that she's offered for this loan is 5.75%. So now we need to find out number 1, how much interest is she going to pay on this loan. So for that we need the formula I is equal to PRT, and we take the values from here. The principal is $6,200. The rate is equal to 5.75 divided by 100 times the time. And remember, the time is going to be in years, so we need to have a 30 months, right, over 12 months in a year. So that basically convert this quantity into years, right? So this cancels with that, and now we have basically 6200. This one, we need to move the decimal point 2 spaces, so we get 0.0575, and here this one gives us 2.5. So now that we have that, we calculate that one. You can use the calculator. The result is going to turn into A91.25. Okay, so that's the first problem that we have here as part A. Now for B, they're saying that for B, we want to know what was the principal plus the interest. In other words, what is the total amount? So the total amount is going to be principal plus interest, right? And what is that equal to? The principal we know is 622, right? Then we need to add the interest that she pays, so it's 891.25, and in the total of this is going to be, in terms of dollars, 7091.25. So this is what we have in this example, and let's walk through some of the details of this problem. So an amount is borrowed, that's the principal, right? The time is 30 months long, right? 30 months, we know that this is the time, but the time have to be in years, right? The principal is in dollars, and the rate is in percentage, right? So it's already given for us here. So all we need to do now is pick these numbers and plug it into our formula. This is a formula that you're familiar with already. So we plug in the values with the proper conversions, right? This is basically saying that you move the decimal point 2 points here, 1, 2. So that's the answer. So this is the amount of interest that the person paid, right? So this is the interest. And then the total amount paid back to the bank is going to be basically the principal plus the interest paid, and that's what we do here, right? So that's the answer right there. Make sure that you practice this problem. It's kind of simple, but there are some interesting steps that you have to do, like in here and here. These 2 points are critical things for you to be able to do this kind of problem. We're going to do another example. We're going to move to example number 2. And example number 2, page 574, what they're telling us here is that Philip agrees to lend, right, $850, right? So we're borrowing from an institution to his friend Joe to help to travel to Cincinnati to attend a family wedding. 9 months later, Joe repaid the original $850. So this is the money that the friend had borrowed. This is Philip has lent his friend $850. So this is basically our principal, right? And then 9 months later, Joe paid Philip the money plus $51. So basically, at the end, the friend Joe, right? Joe, this is Philip. At the end, Joe paid $850 plus $51 to his friend. So, and the question is, what annual rate of interest did Joe pay to Philip? So the interest is what we're asking. Interest that Joe paid, right? So to Philip. So that's what we're asking, right? What was the interest? So we're looking into that. So now we know that for our formula, the principal is basically the money that you pay here, but we want to know the interest rate. So that this is the interest in total that we can say that he pays. So we have I is equal to PRT. So this is our interest here, 51 is equal to the P is 850, and then times the rate that we don't know, right? That's in a percentage, times the time, right? We need to find out what the time is, and the time here is 9 months, right? So it's 9 months over 12 months, right? To make it into the quantity into years. So what do we have here is 51 is equal to 850 times the rate, right? That's the part that we don't know. So times here, this is 0.75, right? So we do some manipulation here. We get that 51 is equal to, when you multiply 850 times 0.75, it results into 637.5 R, right? Now we use our algebra here. We divide everything by 637, so we get what? So we get 51 divided by 637.5 is equal to R, and therefore this value is equal to 0.08, right? And this is the decimal, so we need to convert it into percentage. To convert this number into percentage, we need to multiply it times 100, and so the rate in percentage is going to be equal to multiply this 0.08 times 100%, and so that's equal to 8%. So let's review this problem again. So here we are they're telling us that Philip lent his friend $150. That's the principal. Now Joe, after 9 months, repaid the amount, but rewarded his friend with $51, right? So if we work the problem backwards, this is the money that he received in interest, the $51. We use the same formula here, and we're trying to find out what is the rate, right? But remember, the rate for us has to be given in percentage. And the time here is 9 months over 12 months, so this becomes converted in the amount into years, so 0.75 year, right? And doing the calculation, we find that R is equal to 51 equals to 637.5. So R has to be solved from here. We need to solve for R, right? We need to find what the value of R is. And to do that, we need to do the manipulation where we divide everything by 637.5, and that's what we did here, and that's why we ended up with a 1 here, right? But we don't write it down, we got it with 1R. And then when we calculate this number, the number turned out to be 0.08. But this is a decimal. So this number has to be converted into a percentage, and to do that, we multiply this number by 100%, and so the answer that we get is 8%. That should be our answer. This is a very important problem. So I'll show you a couple more so that you get a good sense of how to use the formula. Perhaps we'll do one more example. We move now to example number 3. You find this on your book, page 575. And basically, the problem here is stated as follows. It says that to obtain new glasses, Gilbert decides to pawn his trumpet. Gilbert borrowed $240, and after 30 days, he gets back his trumpet, right, by paying the pawnbroker $288. And the question is, what annual rate of interest did Gilbert pay, right? So now we have to set up our formula. Interest is equal to PRT. So Gilbert basically is going to be paying this amount, right? So the interest that he paid basically has to do with $288 minus the $240 that he was given. So in essence, he paid the interest of $48, right? Now, that's because of the money that he was given, right? He was given this money, and this is what he paid. Now, we have to solve the problem again. So now let's do, this will be our interest here, so it will be 48 is equal to P is the amount that he was given. So this is our principal. So this 240, right? And the rate was 30 days, right? So you have a 30 days over 360. We use 360 for a year, number of days for a business. So that's that. And then the time, and then the rate, right? I'm using the rate here. So basically that's the way to set up this problem. So we start to solve it. We have a 240, right? We have the rate. This will be 1 over 12, right? And now we need to solve this here. We have a 48 is equal to 20R, right? So 20R is equal to 48. Dividing everything by 20, we get that R then is equal to that, right? So, and that number is equal to 2.4. But again, remember that this number is a decimal, right? This is a decimal, so we have to convert it into a percentage. So the rate in percentage, right, is going to be equal to 2.4 times 100%, and that will be equals to 240%. Okay, that's another way of trying to solve these problems. And again, let's do some sanity check. When you go back to view what we've done here, so he has basically given 30 days to get his trumpet back, right? So that's our time. And then he was given 240, right? But in order for him to recover his trumpet at the end, he has to pay 288. Okay, so the difference between two is the interest. So this was basically the interest that he originally was given to the PAN manager. So we remember to use our formula. So we plug the interest here, the 240, which is our P, the rate, right? And then here is the time, right? 30 months divided by 360, I'm sorry, 30 days divided by 360 days, which turns out to be 240, the rate 1/12, and then we just, from here, we just do the arithmetic, and right here we solve for R, right? We solve for R here, which is the rate, right? This is the rate here. But remember, this number is given to you in decimal form. So you have to convert the decimal form into percentage, right? And that's what we do in this step here, right? We multiply times 100%. So the actual rate that the person really paid was 240. So make sure that you follow the steps, do it carefully. Some of these problems are always good to know whenever you are doing your own financial situation, calculating numbers and all that. It will help you to do your the best thing for you when it comes to making loans and all those things. We are going to spend some time showing you how to use a calculator to do percentage. It's always that you need to know when you are doing your work. If you decide to use a calculator, make sure that you know how to do it. So now let's say, for example, we want to convert 2%, right? To be able to do the calculations, I do 2%, enter. That's not the right answer. Can you see the answer there? Okay, let's do it here. 2, we look for the percentage here, 0.2. So this calculator is the wrong step. We have to clear it. We have to figure out how to do percentage. So it's 2, enter. So that's the right steps. Right? Every calculator is different. Make sure that you know how to do it. We'll clear it again. We'll do it again. These are two different models of calculation. So we want to do a 2%, right? So we do 2, yellow, percentage, enter, 0.02. So we go to the other calculator here, it says 2, green, percent, enter, 0.02. As you can see, you have to know your calculator really well if you're going to use it. Otherwise, as I said to you, you can do the calculation by doing something like this, right? So it will be 2 divided by 100, and that's equal to, you have the decimal point is here, you have to move it 2 times, so it's 0.02, and that is the right answer. That's a good hint for you to be able to use your calculator properly. Make sure that you know it. Don't just plug the numbers and expect that the answer is going to be correct. As I show you with this particular TI-34-2 calculator, if you make the wrong choices, this one you have 2 different points when it has percentages, if you can tell, right? So you have to make sure that you have the right button to push. Otherwise, you will get the wrong answer. I hope this helps you, and we'll continue next time. Thank you.